The challenge of the sacred spear. The arena was alive with alien chants echoing through the blood-red sky. Thousands gathered beneath the twin suns of Varus Prime, the world of warriors. In the center of the arena stood a single human, Commander Ethan Drake, the last survivor of the Terran fleet destroyed in orbit. He was bound by no chains, yet surrounded by hundreds of armored guards, each carrying energy spears that shimmered with blue light. Across from him stood Karina of the Thalren, a tall, silver-skinned alien huntress whose glowing eyes burned with contempt. Her people called her the Daughter of Blades, undefeated in ritual combat. She had slain beasts that towered over starships, broken assassins in half with her bare hands, and now, by the decree of the High Matron, she would fight the human for the honor of her clan. But no one knew the truth. The fight wasn't just for pride, it was for destiny, for on Varus Prime. If a warrior cast their sacred spear and it was caught, the bond of fate was sealed. The catcher became their master, their destiny bound by ancient law. It had never happened before, because no one had ever survived the throw. The High Matron raised her staff, her voice echoing through the crowd. By ancient tradition of the Thalren, we honor the trial of the spear. The crowd roared. Karina raised her weapon, the air around it shimmering like a storm. Her voice was low, defiant. "You are far from your broken earth, human, and your kind does not belong here." Ethan said nothing, only stared back with calm blue eyes, the mark of an earth soldier. Quiet strength, not arrogance. The alien crowd laughed, expecting him to tremble. Instead, Ethan simply raised one hand, motioning for her to throw. She grinned, savage and confident. The spear hummed with energy, ancient runes glowing down its shaft. Then, with a roar that cracked the air, she hurled it. It cut through the atmosphere like a bolt of lightning, the sound exploding through the arena. Every warrior stood in awe, certain the human would die before it reached him. But Ethan moved not with speed, with precision. He stepped aside half a breath, turned his wrist home and caught it. The spear froze mid-air, its energy crackling around his arm. Gasps echoed through the stadium. Karina's eyes widened, disbelief, terror, and something else. Submission. Because the ancient law was clear. If the sacred spear was caught, the one who threw it was bound by honor, bound to serve, or to love. The one who caught it. The High Matron rose from her throne, her voice trembling. "By the oldest code of the Thalren, the bond is sealed." Karina fell to her knees, clutching her heart as the spear's glow pulsed between them. Her people whispered, horrified. A human had done the impossible, and now the proud warrior was his. Ethan stood still, his voice calm. "I didn't come to claim you," he said softly, "but I won't dishonor your law." Karina's eyes met his, filled with fire, fury, and something she could not name. The crowd chanted his name now. Human, human. But Ethan Drake didn't celebrate, because he knew what came next. In a galaxy ruled by ancient laws and brutal honor, he had just declared war on an entire civilization. The law of blood and bond. The echo of the crowd faded as the twin suns dipped below the horizon of Varus Prime. The arena, once roaring with noise, now felt cold and silent. Ethan stood surrounded by warriors who no longer looked at him as prey. They looked at him as something far worse. A breaker of destiny. A living omen. Karina still knelt before him, her head lowered, her fists trembling against the ground. The glow from the spear slowly faded, but the mark it left upon her chest burned bright. A crimson seal of servitude. Every Thalren warrior watching knew what that meant. She was bound by the law of bond, the ancient code older than their empires. A warrior who lost their spear to another was no longer their own master. The High Matron's voice broke the silence, deep and cold like thunder. "Karina of the Thalren, Daughter of the Blades. Bound now by your own spear." Karina clenched her jaw, shame and disbelief filling her chest. Her people were watching, their faces twisted between disgust and fear. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but the seal glowed brighter with every heartbeat. It was not a curse, it was truth. Ethan stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. He didn't raise his voice, but every word carried weight. "I didn't mean to dishonor you," he said quietly. "But where I come from, we don't throw weapons unless we're ready to lose them." A murmur swept through the arena. No one had ever spoken to a Thalren warrior that way and lived. Karina's gaze rose to meet his, fierce yet uncertain. She saw not arrogance, but something she didn't understand. Compassion, maybe even respect. The high matron turned to her guards, her face pale. This human has bound one of our own, yet no blood was shed. Her eyes narrowed. Bring them both to the temple of the old law. The stars must decide their fate, the guards obeyed, their armor clanking as they surrounded Ethan and Karina. No one dared attack him now. He had become a symbol of something their laws could not control. That night, the two were taken to the temple, a towering hall carved from obsidian stone. Glowing runes moved across the walls like living fire. Karina walked ahead, her wrists glowing faintly with the bond mark. Ethan followed, his steps steady, his mind trying to piece together what he had walked into. Inside, an elder priest stepped forward, his eyes ancient and empty. He looked from Karina to Ethan, his voice a low whisper that carried across the hall. The spear has chosen. The bond cannot be undone, Ethan frowned. You mean she's enslaved? The priest shook his head slowly. No, human. She is not your servant, he said. She is your equal under the bond. Her life tied to yours can, if one dies, both die. Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't just caught a weapon. He had caught her fate. Karina's voice broke through the silence, trembling with anger. You brought shame to me. Human, she hissed. I am bound to a creature not of my kind, and my people will never forgive it. Ethan met her glare, his voice calm but sharp. Then maybe they need to see what your ancient law really means. Her breath caught. For a moment she saw something in him. Strength without cruelty, command without pride. It unsettled her more than any blade could. Outside, the city of warriors stirred. Rumors spread faster than light. The human who caught the sacred spear, the warrior bound to him by fate, and as the twin moons rose, the high matron whispered to her advisors, if the bond stands, it could break the order of our world. Her gaze darkened. Then the human must die before dawn. But within the temple walls, as Karina sat in silence, she felt a strange pull through the bond, a connection that hummed like a heartbeat. Not pain, not fear, something else. Ethan stood nearby, unaware that their lives had already begun to intertwine in ways neither could escape. The night grew quiet. Outside, assassins were already gathering inside. Destiny had just begun to awaken. The assassins of the night darkness covered the city of Varus Prime like a shroud of iron. The twin moons hung low, their silver light cutting through the mist that rose from the temple grounds. Inside the temple, Ethan slept against the cold stone wall, his breathing steady, unaware that death was already on its way. Karina could not sleep. Her mind burned with anger and confusion. The bond between her and the human pulsed faintly beneath her skin, a living thread of energy. Every time she tried to ignore it, the connection grew stronger. She could feel his heartbeat steady and calm. She could feel his dreams, flashes of fire, war and a blue world long lost. She stood near the sacred brazier, the flames dancing against her silver skin. She wanted to hate him, to break the bond. But the more she watched him, the more she felt something strange. Respect maybe, or the weight of fate itself. He had done what no warrior in her people's history ever could. He had caught the sacred spear, and now he carried her destiny with him. Then the bond shivered. A cold tremor ran through her chest. Danger. She spun toward the entrance, her eyes narrowing as shadows moved beyond the temple doors. She could hear it now. Soft footsteps, whispers in the ancient tongue, the click of blades being drawn without hesitation. Karina reached for her spear, but then she remembered she had no weapon. It was his now. Ethan stirred awake, eyes opening instantly, his soldier's instincts alive. What's happening? He whispered. Karina's voice was low and sharp. They come for you, she said. Assassins of the matron, silent killers of the Thalren. Ethan rose slowly, scanning the shadows. How many? Too many, she replied, her tone flat but her eyes burning. Ethan smiled faintly, that calm, fearless smile that made her heart twist in ways she didn't understand. Then we better move, he said. The doors burst open, and 6 assassins slipped inside, their armor black as night, their eyes glowing violet. They moved like ghosts, blades drawn, no sound but the hiss of energy cutting through air. Ethan grabbed a fallen torch and slammed it into the floor, light flaring through the chamber. Stay behind me, he said. Karina glared. I should protect you, she growled. Not tonight, he answered. The first assassin lunged, a blur of speed and shadow. Ethan sidestepped, his reflexes honed from years of Terran warfare. He caught the assassin's wrist and twisted, driving the man into the stone floor. Another came from behind, but Karina moved faster, her bare hands flashing. She seized the attacker's blade, turning it against him with brutal grace. The temple erupted in chaos. Energy blades clashed against stone. Sparks lit the night like fireflies. Ethan fought with nothing but instinct and strength. Karina fought with fury and skill. And somewhere between those battles, their bond pulsed again. Stronger, deeper, alive. When the last assassin fell, silence returned to the temple. The air smelled of smoke and blood. Ethan wiped his arm, breathing hard but steady. Karina stared at him, at the human who refused to die. He had saved her, even though she had been ready to let him fall. She stepped closer, her voice quiet now. "They will send more," she said. Ethan nodded. "Then we won't be here when they come." Her eyes widened. "You mean to run?" He smiled faintly. "No, I mean to fight him, but not here." Karina hesitated, torn between duty and something far more dangerous. "You could leave me," she said, testing him. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "If I leave, you die," he said. "And I don't abandon those who fight beside me." Something shifted inside her. For the first time in her life, the word honor felt different. Not about killing, but about standing. She nodded slowly. "Then we fight together," she whispered. As dawn broke over the crimson horizon, the two fugitives slipped out of the temple. Behind them, the matron's banners were already rising. Across the city, her voice echoed through the broadcast towers. "The human has defiled our law. Capture them both." Dead or alive, but far beyond the walls, Ethan and Karina disappeared into the wild dunes of Varys. The bond between them now a living flame, neither knowing that this was only the beginning. Because the ancient prophecy of her people had spoken of this moment, long before either of them were born. A prophecy that whispered, "When the alien warrior binds to the man of earth, the stars themselves will burn anew." The prophecy of the twin suns. The desert of Varys stretched endlessly beneath the glowing twin suns. Its sands shimmered like molten glass, and every gust of wind carried whispers of ancient battles. Ethan and Karina moved through the dunes in silence, their shadows long against the blood-colored horizon. They had been running for days, hunted by her own people, marked by fate itself. Ethan's uniform was torn, his boots covered in sand, yet his posture never wavered. Karina watched him as they climbed another ridge. How could a human born on a fragile blue world carry himself like a warrior born of fire? He did not complain, did not rest, only kept moving and steady, focused, determined. It unsettled her because it reminded her of the old stories told by elders around the sacred fires, about the time before the stars were divided, about the prophecy of the twin suns. They stopped at a small canyon where ruins of an ancient temple lay half buried in the sand. Karina knelt beside one of the fallen stones, brushing away dust with her hands. Old runes glowed faintly beneath her touch. The language of her ancestors. "This place," she whispered. "It should not exist anymore." Ethan crouched beside her, eyes scanning the symbols. "What does it say?" Her voice trembled slightly. "It speaks of a time when our people were not alone," she said. "When we fought beside the ones called children of Terra." Ethan froze. "Terra," he said softly. "That's Latin for earth." Karina turned to him sharply, her golden eyes wide. "You mean your world?" He nodded slowly. She stared at the stone again, her heart pounding. The runes glowed brighter as if responding to his presence. The inscription read, "When the sky burns twice and the bond of spear and heart is sealed, the lost kin of the stars shall rise again, and the flame of unity will bring war to peace." Karina felt her chest tighten. "The prophecy of the twin suns," she murmured. "Our oldest myth. No one believed it was real." Ethan stood quietly, his eyes tracing the runes. "Maybe it wasn't a myth," he said. Maybe it was a warning. Before she could answer, the ground beneath them shuddered. The sand shifted, and the ruins began to hum with energy. From beneath the temple stones, blue light burst upward, forming a swirling symbol in the air. Karina stepped back in awe, her voice trembling. "The seal of the first bond," she whispered. "It recognizes you." The light expanded, revealing a figure made of pure energy, an ancient Thalaran spirit. Tall and radiant, its voice echoed through the canyon, deep and sorrowful. "The bond of the spear has awakened once more." The cycle begins again. The warrior and the human, bound by fate, shall decide the fate of the stars. Ethan and Karina stood frozen as the vision flickered and faded into dust. Silence fell heavy and sacred. Karina turned to him, her voice trembling between fear and belief. "Do you understand what this means?" Ethan nodded slowly. "It means this isn't just about you and me," he said. "It's about everyone." Before they could speak again, a sharp sound echoed from above. Engines. Dozens of Thalran skimmers appeared over the dunes, banners of the High Matron fluttering in the heat. Karina's eyes widened. "She found us," she whispered. Ethan's expression hardened. "Then we stand together," he said, grabbing the sacred spear from his back. Karina hesitated for only a heartbeat, then stepped beside him, her hand glowing with the bond's energy. Her voice was fierce again, the voice of a warrior reborn. "Then let them come," she said, as the sun blazed behind them. Their silhouettes burned against the horizon, human and alien, bound by ancient law, facing an army together. The desert wind howled as the first ship descended, but neither moved, because something greater than fear now connected them. Destiny itself. And somewhere high above, the High Matron watched from her flagship, her voice filled with rage. "If the prophecy is true," she hissed, "then their bond will destroy everything we built." Her second-in-command bowed. "Shall we strike, Matron?" Her eyes burned with hate. "No," she said coldly. "Let the stars themselves decide their fate." The battle beneath the twin suns. The morning light struck the dunes like fire. The twin suns rose together for the first time in centuries, their blazing orbits merging above the desert sky. The old warriors of Varus said such a sign meant the end of one age and the birth of another. And today, under that burning sky, two figures stood ready to defy an empire. Ethan Drake, last son of Earth's fallen fleet, held the sacred spear in his hands. The weapon glowed with both blue and crimson light, its energy pulsing like a living heart. Beside him stood Karina of the Thalran, her armor cracked and scorched, her eyes fierce with purpose. The mark of the bond burned on both their chests, a symbol that united their fates forever. Across the dunes, the Matron's army assembled. Hundreds of skimmers hovered above the sand, their engines howling like storms. Columns of soldiers stretched across the horizon. At the center of it all stood the High Matron herself, wrapped in black robes, her staff glowing with ancient power. She raised her hand and spoke with a voice that echoed through the wind. "By the authority of the Thalran, destroy the human and his cursed bond." Karina looked at Ethan, her voice low but steady. "You can still run," she said. Ethan smiled faintly, his tone calm as ever. "Not a chance," he replied. "If I run, I break the bond, and I don't break promises." Her chest tightened at his words, a feeling she had never known before, pride mixed with something deeper. The first wave of ships fired. The sky exploded in fire and sand. Ethan raised the spear, its energy surging like lightning through his veins. The bond flared, linking their minds, their hearts, their strength. Karina shouted, "Together!" They moved as one. She leapt high, cutting through a skimmer's engine with her bare hands. Ethan hurled the spear. It became a streak of pure light, tearing through the air and shattering the Matron's banners. The desert became a storm of battle. Soldiers fell like rain, machines burst into flame, and every time they struck, the bond grew stronger. Karina could feel his courage filling her veins. He could feel her power guiding his strikes. Two beings, two worlds, fighting not as enemies, but as one soul shared between stars. The High Matron screamed from her command ship, "Enough! End this madness!" She unleashed her own power, the dark energy of the old code. Bolts of purple lightning cracked across the sky. Striking the sand and turning it to glass, Ethan was thrown back. His armor burning, Karina cried out, rushing to his side. He forced himself up, his hand gripping hers, their bond glowing like the sun itself. "No more chains," he whispered. "No more lies," she answered. The spear floated between them, alive with both their energy. The old runes on its shaft flared brighter than the suns above. Together they hurled it toward the Matron's flagship. The world seemed to stop. The weapon cut through space and struck the ship's core. A brilliant explosion swallowed the horizon, shaking the desert for miles. When the light faded, silence followed. The armies had stopped fighting, watching in awe. The Matron's ship was gone, and where it had stood, a new light rose into the sky, a symbol shaped like the mark of the bond. Shining between the twin suns, Karina fell to her knees. Exhausted but alive, Ethan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes filled with something beyond words. "Not over," she whispered, "just beginning." Around them, the surviving Thalran warriors lowered their weapons. Some knelt, others simply stared. The prophecy had come true. The bond of spear and heart had united blood once divided. From that day forward, the story of the human and the alien warrior became legend, a tale told in every world touched by the light of the twin suns. And as the wind carried the sound of the dying battle away, Ethan looked to the horizon. "We'll rebuild," he said quietly. "A future where humans and Thalran fight side by side." Karina smiled faintly. "Then I will fight with you," she said. "Always." The twin suns burned brighter. Two souls stood beneath them, no longer enemies, no longer bound by law but by choice, by the power of the bond that defied fate. And in that light the galaxy began to change.